The water was so cold it stopped feeling like cold and started feeling like fire, and I wondered if this was how I would spend every morning for the rest of my life. I was 21 years old, and I had never once felt like I belonged anywhere, least of all in my own skin. The river ran swift and gray beneath the October sky, carrying away the soap suds and the dirt from my family's clothes. My fingers had gone numb an hour ago. The skin cracked and raw where the lye soap had eaten into the cuts I could no longer feel. I knelt on the wet stones, my threadbare dress soaked to the knees, and I scrubbed at a stain that would not come out no matter how hard I tried. It was blood, I realized. My sister Maren had gone hunting with the young wolves of the pack, and she had returned with gore on her sleeves and triumph in her silver eyes. My family. I still called them that, though they had stopped calling me daughter years ago. To my mother, I was the one who fetched and carried. To my father, I was invisible, a ghost who moved through the house completing tasks no one acknowledged. To my sister Marin, I was less than the mud beneath her polished boots, less than the servants we could not afford, less than anything that mattered. I plunged another shirt into the water, my knuckles cracking against the stones. The ache had become so familiar I barely noticed it anymore. What I noticed instead was the silence of the forest behind me, the way the birds had stopped singing, the way the wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Something watched me from between the trees. I could feel it like a hand pressed between my shoulder blades, warm and heavy and impossible to ignore. When I turned, there was nothing. Only shadow and mist and the endless columns of pines stretching toward a pale autumn sky. I am a Lycan. I was born to a Lycan mother and a Lycan father, in a cottage at the edge of pack territory, where the forest meets the farmland. My sister shifted for the first time when she was 16, her wolf emerging silver and sleek under a winter moon, while our parents wept with pride. I remember standing at the edge of the clearing, my hands pressed to my chest, waiting for my own bones to answer the call of the moon. They never did. Year after year, moon after moon, I remained stubbornly, shamefully human in a world of wolves. The pack whispered that I was cursed. My mother said I was broken, defective, a punishment from the old gods for some sin she could not name. Eventually, I began to believe them both. The feeling of being watched intensified. I wrung out the shirt and draped it over the rocks to dry, my breath misting in the cold air. My back ached from bending and my stomach was hollow with hunger. I had not eaten since yesterday when I had scraped the last of the porridge from the pot after my family had finished their breakfast. There was never enough left for me. There was never enough of anything for me. Speak, I told myself. No one can hear you. The forest is empty, and the river does not judge. So I did. I spoke to the water because the water never looked at me with disappointment, never made me sleep in the storage room behind the kitchen while my sister lounged in silk, never measured my worth by a transformation I could not give. I hate them, I whispered to the current, and the words felt dangerous and true. I hate that I wake before dawn to light their fires and scrub their floors. I hate that Marin throws her dirty clothes at me like I am nothing, like I exist only to serve her. I hate that my mother measures my value in wolf fur I cannot grow, in claws I cannot summon, in a howl that has never left my throat. And most of all, I hate myself for still hoping they might love me someday, for still believing that if I work hard enough, if I am good enough, they might finally see me as their daughter again. The words felt like stones leaving my chest, heavy and sharp and ancient. When they were gone, I felt hollow, emptied of something I had carried so long I had forgotten it was there. I wiped my eyes with the back of my wet hand, tasting salt and river water, and I turned to gather more laundry from the basket. He was standing at the edge of the river. I did not hear him approach. One moment the bank was empty, and the next he was there, tall and still as the ancient pines themselves. He wore dark traveling clothes, simple but finely made, a cloak pushed back from broad shoulders to reveal the lean, powerful build of a wolf in human skin. His hair was dark, threaded with silver at the temples. And his eyes were the color of winter amber, pale and burning with an intensity that made my breath catch in my throat. A wolf's eyes in a man's face. He looked at me as if he had been looking for a very long time, as if he had crossed mountains and rivers and years to stand on this bank and find me kneeling in the shallows with my cracked hands and my broken heart. I scrambled backward, my foot slipping on wet stone. "Who are you?" My voice came out cracked, defensive, the voice of a creature who had learned long ago that strangers meant danger. This was pack territory, but he was no wolf I recognized, and there was something about him that made the air feel thinner, charged with invisible lightning. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he stepped into the shallows without hesitation, the water swirling around his boots, and he crossed toward me with a certainty that stole my breath. I should have run. Every instinct honed by years of survival told me to run, but my legs would not move, and my heart was pounding with something that was not quite fear, something older and stranger and more powerful than any emotion I had a name for. He stopped an arm's length away. Up close, I could see the faint scars on his jaw, pale lines that spoke of old battles and older wounds. His presence was immense in a way I could not explain, as if the forest itself leaned toward him, as if the river slowed its current in deference to his passage. "I heard you," he said. His voice was low and rough, edged with something that might have been tenderness. "I heard every word you spoke to the water." Shame flooded through me, hot and immediate. "You were spying on me." I tried to make it an accusation, but it came out small and broken, the protest of someone who had long ago stopped expecting privacy or dignity. "I was passing through these lands," he said, "and then I felt you." He tilted his head, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. "You carry a wolf inside you. I can sense her, sleeping in your bones, waiting beneath your skin. Why does she not come when you call?" "I do not have a wolf." The old bitterness rose in my throat, familiar as my own heartbeat. I am 21 years old and I have never shifted. I am nothing. I am broken. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of emotion I could not read. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and when I did not, he lifted my chin with 2 fingers. His touch was warm against my frozen skin, gentle in a way no one had touched me in years. "You are not broken," he said, and his voice held absolute certainty. "You are buried. There is a difference." Before I could respond, before I could ask what he meant, or who he was, or why he looked at me like I was something precious and rare, he leaned forward and pressed his mouth to the curve of my neck where it met my shoulder. I felt a sharp sting, a flash of heat, and then a sensation I had no name for flooded through me, golden and vast, connecting me to him in ways that defied understanding. He pulled back, and I saw the mark on my skin, already healing into a pale crescent moon. "I have claimed you," he said quietly. "Before the old laws and the watching moon, you are my Luna. No one will ever treat you as less than again." I stared at him, my hand pressed to my throat where the mark pulsed with strange warmth. "I did not know you. I do not even know your name." He could have been anyone. He could have been a rogue, a madman, a monster wearing a handsome face. He smiled, and it was not a cruel smile but a weary one, as if he too understood the absurdity of what he had done, as if he had surprised himself as much as he had surprised me. "My name is Jareth," he said. "I am the king of the northern packs, ruler of the territory from the frozen mountains to the eastern sea. And I have been searching for you, Kira of the river, since before you were born." The world tilted beneath my feet. The king, the Lycan King, whose name was spoken with reverence and fear around every fire in our territory. I had heard stories of him all my life, legends of his strength and his justice and his loneliness. They said he had never taken a Luna, that no wolf had ever been worthy of standing at his side. And he was here, standing in a river with his boots soaked through, telling me that I was his queen. The weeks that followed were a blur of silk and ceremony and disbelief. I was taken from my family's cottage, from the storage room and the washboard and the endless piles of dirty clothes, and brought to the king's castle in the heart of the northern woods. It rose from the forest like something grown rather than built, its ancient stones covered in moss and ivy, its towers reaching toward clouds that seemed close enough to touch. The halls were vast and warm, filled with wolves who bowed when I passed, who called me Luna in voices that held no mockery, only respect. I kept waiting to wake up. Every morning, I opened my eyes expecting to see the cramped storage room, expecting to hear my mother's sharp voice calling me to my chores. Instead, I woke in a bed softer than clouds, in a room larger than my family's entire cottage, with sunlight streaming through windows of colored glass. My family came to the castle on the third day. My mother wore her finest dress, the one she saved for pack gatherings, and she smiled at me with teeth that had never smiled for me before. "My darling daughter," she said, reaching for my hands with fingers that had only ever pushed me away. "We always knew you were special. We always believed in you." I pulled away from her touch. The words I wanted to say burned in my throat like fire. But Jareth was watching from across the room, his amber eyes steady and knowing, and I would not give my mother the satisfaction of seeing me break. Marin stood behind her, silver hair gleaming in the candlelight, her beautiful face twisted with a hatred so pure it was almost admirable. She did not speak to me. She did not need to. Her silence said everything her words could not. They left that evening, laden with gifts I had not chosen to give. I stood at the window of my chamber and watched their carriage disappear into the trees, and I waited to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, vindication. Instead, I felt only emptiness, a hollow space where love should have been. Helena arrived the following week. I had heard her name before she ever set foot in the castle, whispered in hushed tones by the servants who braided my hair and brought me meals I still was not used to eating. Lady Helena of the Eastern Ridge, whose family had been allied with Jareth's for 3 generations. She had been promised to him since childhood, a political match meant to unite their territories and strengthen the kingdom. For 15 years, she had waited to become queen. She had learned the protocols, memorized the ceremonies, practiced the smile she would wear when she stood at the king's side. And now I had taken her place. She was beautiful in the way winter is beautiful, cold and sharp and merciless. Her hair was the color of dark honey, falling in perfect waves past her shoulders. Her eyes were green, so pale they looked almost white, and when she turned them on me, I felt the weight of her hatred like a physical thing pressing against my chest. "You must be the river girl," she said when we first met, her voice pleasant and musical and utterly devoid of warmth. "I have heard so much about you." "I am Kira," I said, and I hated how uncertain I sounded, how small. "Yes." She smiled, and it did not reach her eyes. It did not even try. "I know exactly who you are." The sabotage began small, so small I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. A dress torn before an important dinner, the seams split so precisely it could not have been an accident. A letter from Jareth mysteriously lost, leaving me waiting in the wrong chamber for hours. Rumors that drifted through the court like poison smoke, whispers that I was barren, that I was cursed, that the king's mark had been a moment of madness he would soon regret. Then it grew bolder. Food that made me ill, though no one else at the table suffered. A staircase that had been waxed to impossible slickness just before I descended. A horse that had been fed something to make it wild, rearing and nearly throwing me before the stablemaster could intervene. I could not prove Helena was behind any of it, but I felt her fingerprints on every disaster. Saw her satisfied smile each time I stumbled or failed. I learned to watch my back. I learned to check my food, to test every step before I took it, to lock my doors at night with furniture pushed against them. I learned to trust no one but Jareth and the handful of servants who had shown me genuine kindness. I learned that being queen meant being hunted, and I had spent too many years surviving my own family to be destroyed now. Jareth believed me when I told him about Helena. He posted guards, dismissed servants who had proven disloyal, held me close in the dark hours of the night when the weight of it all threatened to crush me. But he could not act openly without proof. Helena's family was too powerful, their alliance too valuable, and she was too clever to leave evidence behind. 3 months passed. The blood moon approached, the most sacred night in the Lycan calendar, when the entire pack gathered to honor the old gods and renew their bonds. It was also the night when a new Luna would be formally presented to the pack, when I would stand before hundreds of wolves and claim my place at Jareth's side. Helena made her move the morning before the ceremony. I was walking in the castle gardens, alone for the first time in weeks, when 2 of her guards seized me from behind. They dragged me through the trees to a clearing deep in the forest, where Helena waited with a circle of her loyalists and threw me to my knees in the frozen dirt. "Did you really think you could take what was mine?" Helena's voice was soft, almost gentle, the voice of someone explaining something obvious to a very stupid child. "A broken thing who cannot even shift? You are not fit to be a servant, let alone a queen." I looked up at her, my heart pounding, and I saw the madness behind her beautiful eyes. She had waited too long. She had wanted too much. And now she was going to destroy me, one way or another. "I found these," she said, holding up a bundle of letters. "Written in your hand, to a wolf in the Southern Territories. Proof that you have been plotting against the king, feeding information to his enemies." She smiled. "When I present these to the pack tonight, they will tear you apart themselves." The letters were forgeries. I knew it, and she knew it, but it would not matter. By the time anyone examined them closely, the damage would be done. Helena would have her vengeance, and I would be dead or exiled, just another cautionary tale about broken wolves who reached too high. I closed my eyes. I thought of Jareth, who had seen something in me worth claiming. I thought of the river, the cold water, the words I had spoken to the current. I thought of 21 years of being told I was nothing, and something deep inside me, something that had been sleeping for a very long time, began to wake. "Let me go," I said. Helena laughed. "Or what? You will shift and fight me? We both know that will never happen." But something was happening. I could feel it in my bones, a grinding heat, a pressure building beneath my skin. The wolf I had been told I did not have, the wolf Jareth had sensed the very first moment he saw me, was finally rising. I did not fight it. For the first time in my life, I did not try to be small, to be invisible, to be whatever everyone else needed me to be. I let go. The shift was agony and ecstasy, my body breaking and remaking itself in the space of a heartbeat. I heard Helena scream, heard her guard stumble backward, and when I opened my eyes, I saw the world through new senses, sharper and brighter and infinitely more alive. I looked down at my paws. They were white. Pure, impossible white, the color of fresh snow, the color of moonlight on water. I threw back my head and howled, and the sound echoed through the forest like a declaration of war. The blood moon ceremony that night was nothing like Helena had planned. I walked into the great hall at Jareth's side, human again but forever changed, and the pack parted before us like water before a ship's prow. Helena stood near the front, her face pale as death, her forged letters crumpled in her trembling hands. She had not expected me to survive. She had certainly not expected me to shift. Jareth raised his hand for silence. He told them everything, his voice carrying to the farthest corners of the vast hall. He told them how Helena had conspired against their Luna, how she had forged evidence and spread lies, how she had tried to murder me in the woods that very morning. And then he asked me to show them what I had become. I shifted in front of them all, my white wolf emerging beneath the crimson light of the blood moon, and I heard gasps, whispers, cries of wonder rippling through the assembled pack. A white wolf was rare. A white wolf was sacred. A white wolf was the blessing of the old gods themselves, a sign of favor that had not been seen in generations. Helena tried to run. She did not get far. Her own guard seized her, their loyalty shattered by what they had witnessed, and she was dragged before the king to face judgment. I watched her go, and I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a quiet, exhausted peace. The pack knelt. One by one, then in waves, they lowered themselves before their Luna, acknowledging me not because Jareth commanded it, but because I had earned it. I had survived. I had transformed. I had risen from the ashes of everything I had been told I was, and I had become something new. Later that night, Jareth and I stood on the castle balcony, watching the moon paint silver paths across the fresh-fallen snow. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on top of my head, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "You knew," I said quietly, "that day at the river. You knew I could shift." "I knew you would," he said. "When you were ready, when you finally believed you deserved to." I turned in his arms, looking up at his amber eyes, his scarred jaw, the face that had become more familiar to me than my own. Why me? Of all the wolves in all the territories, why did you choose me? He smiled, and it was not the weary smile I had seen that first day, but something warmer, something that promised years and decades and lifetimes yet to come. "Because you spoke to the river," he said. "Because you told the truth when you thought no one was listening. Because even after everything they did to you, your heart was still brave enough to hope." He pressed a kiss to my forehead. "Because you are my Luna. You always were." I leaned into him. My white wolf curled contentedly beneath my skin, and I watched the first snow of winter continue to fall. Behind us, the castle was warm with firelight and celebration. Before us, the future stretched vast and unknown and full of promise. I had been broken once, I had been buried, but I had never truly been lost, and now, at last, I was home.